Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the FourGames Podcast, our very first episode. This is the show where we think simple, have fun, and get things done with FourGame dynamics. My name's John Giuffre, and I will be your host, your guinea pig, your tour guide, and hopefully your comedic relief through the wonderful world of FourGames. So, since this is our very first episode, and we are very, very excited to finally share the show with you, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping and give everyone some shared context. So, figure we should talk about what FourGames is, what you can expect from this podcast, and a little bit more about me. So, let's run through that real quick. What is FourGames? I actually think the best way for you to learn that is to hear from our guest today, who is the creator of FourGames. Our guest is Jamie Combs. Creator of FourGames, founder of Natural Balance Foods, which is a whole food bar company in the UK. So they've made like Naked Bars, NAKD, and Trek Bars. They're delicious, lovely little bars. He got his start, though, as a fitness trainer. And what he realized was he can do a lot of great work with you for 4 or 5 hours a week in the gym, but if you're all stressed out and you hate your life and your fridge is full of junk, that's going to undo whatever progress he made. So he wanted to find a more holistic approach to helping people be healthy and happy. So that's why he started Natural Balance Foods. And along the way, he realized, well, it's not just food that's affecting fitness. It's everything that affects everything. So he started thinking holistically, and he needed a way to sort through all the chaos and complexity in the world, especially starting a new business. And so along the way, he also developed, in addition to some really delicious, food bars, he also developed a really great mental model called FourGame Dynamics. I'm going to cut to him explaining that and hear from you in a second.
FourGames, in the shortest way of talking about it, is a way of looking at things. It's a lens upon the world, a lens that filters complexity of what's going on. Other way of looking at it is just a map of you. If I were to say, hey, let's take a look at you, and I really kept expanding out, connecting everything to everything, what I would get is something like, you're a multidimensional something or other. And we're going to roughly cut up those dimensions into these 4 big chunks so we can navigate and handle it. A tool in the sense of, the problem is overwhelm. The problem is accelerating complexity. Lots of ways to tackle it. FourGame Dynamics is a certain lens that looks at it in a certain way that says, I'm going to prioritize these dimensions, and that allows me to feel like I've got a little bit more control and influence on the situation. And there's something very comforting and handy in that. It's got these different dimensions, basically, of what's going on that I think when you put your life navigation dashboard together, you want to ensure you have. So this first one is deep game, your relationship with mystery. So that starting point of mystery, I think, is really important in the FourGame Dynamics, because we start there and say, from this mystery, from this common sense of we really don't know, we're going to try to construct something useful. It turns out to be really helpful because you're framing everything that's going to come in this kind of metaphoric common sense. Well, if it's kind of like a game, certain other things are kind of implicit. If it's kind of like a battle, other things are implicit. A lot of spirituality is fiddling with that. Long game is a different dimension. Less your relationship with mystery, more your relationship with time and story. Each one of us has a story, a life script about where they came from, where they're going, what's going on now, and that's all done in the idiom of narrative and story. It happens now, but from now we've got the long game of the future we could talk about, but you can't put in your hand, and the long game of the past that we can talk about, but you can't put in your hand. But there's more than that going on with you if you really look. There's also your relationship with stuff. There's the chairs, the gadgets, the trees. What's your relationship with the material world? That's mid-game. So that's what everyone calls the real world. Stuff you can bump into, the world of science, the world of physics, the world of stuff. Everything that you can examine and bang into, mid-game. Feels like the outer world. So now if you start looking around at mid-game, you'll notice, well, God, mid-game's full of environments. And within those environments are these systems that seem to work together, made of these kind of component gadgets of various kinds. That kind of tier, from gadget to system to environment, seems to surround us. But here it is to experiment and play with. But then there's more to you than that. You say, God, if I keep digging and really try to expand this map of me, there's my relationship with mystery, my relationship with time and story, my relationship with environment and material. There's also my relationship inside myself that nobody else can see. My relationship with my physical body, my relationship with my thoughts in my head, my relationship with my emotions and my non-linguistic impulses and sensations. All of that kind of churning within everybody. That's a short game, that kind of 3-part body, emotion, mind, and that's your short game. So looking at all those dimensions happening simultaneously, pretend it's not just a game of life, it's 4 games. Simultaneously, a deep game, long game, mid game, and a short game. And they're happening everywhere all over simultaneously at once. And you're right in the middle of them. And you can look at it that way or not look at it that way. And 4Games is really the art of when useful, when appropriate, to be able to look at what's going on, this big buzzing confusion, and see the 4Games of what's going on. It turns out to be really useful because suddenly options become apparent. And then that long game part of what's my role in it? How am I supposed to proceed from here? What story am I supposed to tell myself about what to do next? And then you come out on the other side of having that skill with a confidence of unclenching, because whatever's in front of you, you can translate now. But this clenching of overwhelm and I don't know what's going to hit me, but I don't know, starts to go away. And in a sense, your true self becomes a lot more free to emerge of what it really wants to do. Then you start looking around. And then you start noticing the most astonishing things. You notice everybody has got their 4 games, you included. They're shifting, changing, connecting all the time. Some people have them almost kind of elegantly woven together in this kind of synergistic way. And it's like, whatever they're doing, but they've got their life and is together with their environment, with their activity, and they seem to have their 4 games in some kind of alignment. And some people are just a mess. And you look back in your own life and you remember when yours were a mess. And once you can distinguish them in a manageable way, you can start to see some patterns that can kind of help influence the future. You can't not see things in 4Games. Part of the idea is to give you a lingo and a way of looking at things that's so simple and so intuitive, even if you disagree, even if you don't like it, even if you think it's ridiculous, you can't not notice it anymore. It's one of those really nice things where awareness is kind of curative. When you really start putting the 4Game glasses on, you see how much the environments dictate people's reactions, and you start to have a great compassion and sympathy for people. Fortuna, luck, has a big part of it. So there's a big piece of compassion, I think, that comes with it when you really see like, hey, there's a lot I can control, but man, there's a lot I don't control. Once you have awareness for that, every situation changes because you then start to take on more responsibility for what goes on in that situation, because you are probably the only one who can see all of that. And who cares to take on a role in relation to it or not. 4Games is for people who want to navigate their life a little more creatively, a little more autonomously, a little more generatively. A lot of us have come to the same sense of there's something multidimensional and mysterious going on, and I have some kind of influence, but not total control. And you just want to help start to get a handle on it. I think 4Game is a great tool for that.
Man, I'm not just saying this because I helped direct that video, but it's gorgeous. So if you're listening to this on audio, go switch over to the video version for a second and go catch that. It was a fun video to do. So that's 4Games. So what's the 4Games podcast going to be about? The 4Games podcast is our chance to get in some reps. So whatever you're learning in life, whether you're learning a new martial art or you're learning 4Games or you're learning calculus, the more reps you get, the more your mind can expand and absorb the subject matter into your brain. And the quicker you learn it, then the quicker you can go do stuff with it. The quicker you can go improve your life or finish a project. And I think that the key to getting reps in is that it's enjoyable. I want this podcast to be fun. And I want to talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. I want to use a 4Game lens to dissect great books, to look at my personal favorite, maybe yours as well, video games, movies, talk to really interesting people, learn about new skills, whether it's gardening or painting or weightlifting or sword fighting. Actually, there's a companion vlog to this podcast episode with Jamie where he teaches sword fighting as a way to learn 4Game dynamics. Very cool. Go check that out. But yeah, so whatever it is, I want to bring a 4Game lens to it. And while our vlog series is kind of a chance to see it in action, and it's flashy and it's fun, and we have blog posts where we can maybe show you some research or really try to condense the information and make it bite-sized. The podcast is a really great chance to kind of go long and go really in depth with these topics with some really cool people. Something about the show and something about me, I'm not a guru. I'm not an expert. When I'm recording this right now, I'm 25. Man, I'm not qualified to tell anyone what to do with their life, nor if I was qualified, would I even want to do that. I'm not interested in telling you how to think or what to do. But I like to think I'm kind of entertaining. I like to think that I'm able to ask interesting questions to cool people, and I'll try things out. I like trying new things. I don't mind if I look like a fool. So I figure between all of that, I can kind of bring on some really great people who maybe do know something and really get those nuggets out of them and make it fun for you. And that's how we're going to get those reps in with FourGames. So 2 things you need to know about me. Of course, well, 3 things. My name's John. Again, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. But 2 other things you need to know about me are I love creating stuff and I love learning. Honestly, I love learning. I love being in the gym. I'm a bit of a meathead. I love reading new books. I love trying new things, practicing skills. I love that. I wasn't always that way. I was pretty overweight kid growing up. I was a pretty sad kid growing up, pretty lazy kid growing up. And honestly, it was content like the Joe Rogan podcast, Elliot Hulse, Strength Camp YouTube, the Tim Ferriss podcast and his books. It kind of like lit a fire under my ass, and it really got me involved in this world. And I think sometimes people can take it too seriously and they can start to judge themselves, or instead of using the information to learn how to be the best version and the most fun version of themselves, it can kind of become about trying to copy a guru or being like someone else that they're not. I think if we keep that kind of content really fun and less preachy, it'll help people not fall into that trap. So that's the one thing, and the other thing is I love creating. I love it. I was making gaming zines, like competitive Pokemon zines on gaming forums when I was like 12. I started stand-up comedy when I was 16. Currently, I'm making music, play piano, play guitar, and it's been my work. I produce videos, I produce events, I help creators with their social media marketing, etc. That's my bread and butter. And so I'm honestly, it's a privilege. It's going to be an absolute joy to be doing this show and all of the other FourGames content, because it's the best of both worlds. It's what I'm good at and love to do, and it's a subject matter that I really love. And not only that, but a really innovative and fun way of looking at it that's fresh and unique. So that's all the housekeeping. Hopefully we never have to do that much housekeeping again, and we can jump right into the show from here on out. And whether you're watching this on day 1 when it's put out, or you're coming back from the future to check out how we started and go down the rabbit hole, thank you for tuning in. And we're grateful for your time and your energy. And we hope we can give that back to you with really great content. So without further ado, let's just jump right into my conversation with the founder of FourGames and the founder of Natural Balance Foods, Jamie Combs.
I think you're one of the early future teachers of it.
Okay.
So I'm also trying to get you to be conscious of this is just the way Jamie does it.
Right.
Soon there's going to be the way I do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go talk to 100 Jamies. So you're on a long game path where you can't not be really good at this someday.
Right.
And I know this. So I sit here now seeing you with respect to what I know can't not happen, given what you're doing by evidence of taking the time to do it here.
Okay.
Guys like that start by being guys like you doing things like this. And so that's what I kind of see, and you can't not unsee it when you see it's like, oh, okay, you're just young, you're right at the part of the story you want to be. Where you sold your shit, you're doing, it seems superficially like you're in a bad part, but this is redemption. But that's just the traditional Dark Knight. That's the part that comes right before whatever, you're going to reposition in the long game, where it's like, you don't have this feeling of you're a loser because you don't have mid-game. You blossoming short game as a youth. No rich old timer's got that. right?
Okay.
This is the part of the story where you just kind of learn, you're only getting better all the time. That's that young part. And then eventually you get to this part where you're on a different side of it, but you can still recognize that. So I think part of the training is me thinking of like, oh, you're going to be one of the great FourGame trainers early of all time. In terms of the story of FourGame training, it's going to be, we fucked around with it and then we kind of tried to formalize it. John was one of the early guys that helped formalize it. And he went and talked to all these different people and kind of recognized the cloud. And then it's moved on a lot since, but that was the early days where people were just kind of playing at the same things, but we didn't quite have terminology. We would have simple, it's just a little bickery. And like what Bruce Lee found like the martial arts community to be like, like, come on, guys, can't say it wrong, And then yada, 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 you've got MMA, and now the slang and frameworks of MMA is different than the whole fragmented world of argumentative martial artists of the 1970s when I grew up, which, but now that test has been run a little bit, you know what I mean? So that's kind of moved on in that sense. But so in the same way, I think you're going to be a part of that, which is this expansion of training, from fitness training to mental training to environmental training to narrative training. Everyone already kind of has arrived at the same intuitions and sense. They just label it differently. But part of the fun of being a trainer is you give a shit about labels because you're going to point it out right now. Here. You know what I mean? So you know ahead of time that that's all just yellow, interesting ways of slicing it and dicing it. But that's not this.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm waiting.
But you know what I mean? It's like, and that's like, there's a lot of different trainings that point that out.
Right.
But when you start putting them all together with a modern person who's coming at you with the FourGames that they have, you want to speak in their language and their idiom.
Right.
And find out what, I don't want to come out and be blown off. So I want to know what your long game really is and what you're looking for and how can I be helpful. But in a multi-dimensional context. Right? I used to be a personal trainer and I would say, endurance, your strength, your flexibility, these different dimensions of you, and I could help you here now, train them.
Right.
I don't have your problems, right? I could, we've got the same dimensions, but since you behave in one way, you're in this situation, and I'm in a different situation, there's luck involved, and here we are. And that exact same sentiment can expand to different dimensions, not just your physical part. That's your apartment, that's your story, but as a personal physical trainer, I wasn't allowed to get to those dimensions. Right. I just had to deal with the consequences in the physical realm when you showed up to my mid-game church and let me play the role of bossing you around for an hour. I got to control at least your short game physical, and a little bit of your mental, and I got to control the situation for your own good a little bit. But there was all these zones I didn't know about, couldn't go, was out of my realm, and just wasn't the mandate of what we were doing. But it's like, we can have the best workout here for an hour. You can go home to your house with your big screen and your couch and your fridge full of crap. And you recognize you're working at cross purposes with someone else, other parts of people's FourGames that you can't directly access. So you're like, well, maybe I could access it with an idea, with an experience, with something kind of inductive. Instead of telling what it is, it just kind of bubbles up on their own. You're like, that's right. The art of doing that was kind of part of what good fitness trainers is, because you couldn't reach those other areas.
Well, like fitness and martial arts is such a good entry point for all this, because if it's just weightlifting, physically you're going to look very different. Or if it's martial arts, you're literally going to know you're safer in every situation. Yes. So those changes are so obvious and other people notice them. So if you're like this fat guy or this super skinny guy, whatever, you buff up. Hey, you're getting attention from people. They're treating you different. They've put you into the long game character that you would rather be, right? So it's a good starting point, but it is a shame that you can't go all the way to it in certain industries.
Well, and that's why FourGame's is so nice, because it opens up the playing field, if one's allowed, the conceit, the lens. So now we can talk about all of these in a way we can agree that's kind of non-aggressive. And the physical guys will get it, because physical guys get real familiar with their environment matters real fast. Right. You did Bikram yoga the other day. You turn the heat up to 108 in your environment. Watch what happens to your short game. Right. I mean, you can notice all of that, right? And so the physical guys figure that out. All the weightlifters, anybody that's dealing with the orange space, and they're dealing with growth over time based on stimulation and different gadgets are hitting it. So all that seems very intuitive, I think, to a lot of kind of fitness metaphor people. Right. I find you can take someone and say, well, physical fitness makes sense. Well, then mental fitness is going to make sense. And emotional fitness is going to make sense. And narrative fitness is going to make sense. And you know what your deep game metaphorics is? Fitness. Right. That makes sense. Right? By demonstrated by what you're doing, and that sense in your heart is like, oh, that does kind of fit. That's that short game part you can't put words to, and only you can say it's true. You can say, no, it's not fitness. It's like a dance, or it's like, whatever. Like all that metaphoric freedom itself is the point.
Right.
Metaphoric freedom, and notice what happens downstream when you start to align those other dimensions with some of this metaphorics. Stuff groks. Makes sense. Oh, you put it that way. It's all kind of like fitness. Oh, okay, I already understand it. So there's all sorts of ways for one game to help the other, just if you've got kind of the lingo and the perspective.
Right.
And I think you're going to find all these teachers and experts in different areas are going to have these non-obvious but really cool and effective ways of like, oh, no, man, I start over here. I turned it up to 108. Tell them to touch their knee. They're like, no, I put a sword in their hand and come right at them. Mm-hmm. Or no, I sit in silence for 50 minutes, just stare at them. Or whatever, it doesn't matter. You've got the ability to kind of analyze the context of what's going on. And you've bounded the context. Not all context. You're going to have, that's your first constraint. That's the game, right? We're going to play within 4. And then why 4? Well, we're kind of a smart monkey. I can't handle much more than 4 before I have to start writing things down. It's not intuitive. And so again, that's just why that feels right in terms of practicality. And that it seems like the minimal viable perspective you can have on any situation. If the whole thing is shrouded in this big perspective of, but really it's mysterious, you don't know.
Right.
This is the best you're figuring in a whole universe of uncertainty. If that makes sense.
It does.
So I think training all that becomes really interesting. And then it seems to be where we are in the story of things. It feels like a lot of people have been coming to this same way of looking at things. It's only a matter of time before some gisty, slangy ways of talking about it comes into play just to consolidate the conversation. You don't need me to tell you 1,000 times about the details of the hero's journey at this point.
Right.
You get the gist. Most people get the gist of a lot of these things. I think there's a whole generation that's grown up now. We get it, grandpa, holistic things. Now let's get on to the meat of it.
Right.
And I think FourGames allows you to get on to the meat of it. It's like, okay, you ready for 102? Okay. 102 is if you can come with me in these 4 games and we can say, gosh, these 4 games are dynamic, happening all the time, and we can't not play. Oh, okay, well, can we influence? Can we play better? What happens if we push here? What if we push there? And that's that sense of playful agency that I think the frame gives you. All of that to say, I think what makes your part of where you are in your long game is like, you're about to go talk to all these people.
Yeah.
And get to play this kind of like, no, I'm smart, but I'm slow. Could you explain it again? That second part about, and all you're trying to do is very sincerely say, hey, help me look through this lens. There's something you're doing that's cool.
Right.
It's, I don't know what it is, but, I'm trying to consolidate all these perspectives into this group so that I can compare them over time. I can distill insights and I can apply it to myself. Because I myself am a 20-something young guy that's trying to do this. Here's my long game if you're interested. Here's my big game if you're interested. But there's also this subject matter.
Yeah.
That I think you're saying. And my role in this subject matter turns out to be one of the early ones. I ran into Garrett, who, and I think we're still at that very early part of the story, which in the story of anything new is it's the awakening phase. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows it. That's why we're here now. That's why I'm talking to you. This whole first chapter bit. But then right ahead comes, but soon after this, since it makes so much sense, and since it's so helpful, since you can try it yourself, we're soon going to get to the next phase, where a lot of people have tried it and liked it. And now you're not going to be just us. There's going to be a group, and there'll be mid-game that comes with this. It will just be at the next chapter of the story. And there'll be a rebalancing that happens as this kind of new idea, new 4-game dynamic kind of comes into the system. And just knowing that that's ahead without knowing the details, you still know a lot, but you have this sense of we can't not get to that spot. Right. Because, and this is where it matters, I'm so convinced this works so well, because it's worked so well for me on the inside out, that I can't imagine that once it gets through to someone else in a way that they rock, it'll at least be half as helpful to them.
Right.
Because I've studied all these really helpful things, and the thing that I end up using, I go back to, is this funny thing. Why is that? For me, that is. But whatever that is, if that's a different tool, that's the tool you want to go out and champion.
Right.
That's why of all the things, they're all cool. This one. Look through this one, man. And who I think you're always kind of talking to is your younger self a little bit. You get that question, God, if I could have run into my older me, when I was young, and he could only had a little bit to tell him, what would you tell him? It wouldn't just be trite that they would have heard before. Then what's that new novel bit? So I think if you look through the world this way, what you kind of need to do is get your 4-game shit together before it's too late. in a playful way that you like doing. Or something, or at least it sets the parameters for that kind of agency that I think people are looking for, that you're never going to get if you're in this just kind of grim, deep game that leads to an uninspiring long game surrounded by a degenerative mid game, and then all these habitual behaviors, and your body starts breaking. I mean, it's hard to get out of that without hitting a bunch of dimensions at once in kind of a skillful way. That's why most people don't do it. And it's really hard to do if you never see the dimensions or anyone explains them to you in such a way that it kind of grok it in your bones, so you're not just intellectualizing all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we've talked about swimming enough. I want to get in the water.
Yeah.
I'll learn more now by swimming. It's not a linguistic thing anymore. It's like this. It's, great, now swim.
Right.
That's why part of the FourGame training, I think, has to integrate all that. We can talk about it. We can lecture, but this isn't a Zoom call with two professors.
Right.
There's some concepts we want to do. And I'm saying, while that concept's there, simultaneously there's an emotion that goes with it. Your physicality is obviously here with it. It showed up here in this place, in this part of the timeline. It's as mysterious as anything else to deal with and rock and frame.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not saying those are real, but if you could put on those glasses and for a moment see as if, what you've done is you've simplified the infinity of perspectives. Like, yeah, dashboard, navigationally wise, orientationally, context-wise, I want to have my orientation on all these dimensions. If I want to keep this idea of kind of playful surfing agency of like, oh, yeah, I have to control it to kind of be able to influence it, right? And that's where I think the martial artists and all the kind of flow metaphoric guys start to get that body feel.
Okay.
Right? Because that's, of course, that goes. If you've got kind of fluid, dynamic, deep game, hey man, it's kind of like water. You're mostly water. It's kind of flowing situation. You start moving like this. Right? Your body starts reflecting it as opposed to clockwork guys or something. But the way that metaphorics drip down becomes really what FourGame dynamic people are looking for. Because whatever you see. But then it's like, how does that relate? How does that go with some other part that doesn't see? That mid game is the way it is because it goes with this part of the long game.
Right.
And that long game is the way it is because it goes with that part of the deep game. In this slice of his story. Right? That he's, of course, supremely interested in, that I don't need to know the content of. I can just see the FourGame dynamic relationships of what's got him where he is, and therefore where it tends to spin him out. You ain't getting anywhere with that mid-game, man. Yeah. That idea is not taking you anywhere. Good luck with that limp. Yeah. Right? All of those things, like you must have a head full of bad ideas in the best heart in the world. You go and just waste your activity time on building stupid gadgets. You know, I mean, you can imagine the worst case in each dimension. You know, because you can imagine for a second your mental space when you've totally lost it. Just all over the place, you can't focus, or it's just right? That's that yellow zone gone awry. Yeah. Versus when that yellow zone is on target or appropriate for the context it's in, and being helpful or doing what you want to do, or your relationship is somehow the way you want it. And likewise with your emotional state, your emotions are just gone bananas. What the hell was all that about? Versus when, again, appropriate for the context. Not mill, not flat, but like ripples on water, appropriate for what gets thrown in. Right? Not a bigger ripple than the rock that gets thrown in. Right. Kind of idea. And likewise with your long game, you can tell when you feel comfortable about your future, where you're going, and you're at peace with your past, and you recognize that what I'm doing now is the spot I need to be in, right? And my job is to kind of enjoy it and participate in it sincerely, versus, oh shit, this is a treadmill down a hallway with no doors. It's not fair because it didn't start this way, and you're just lost in that. That's a horrible place to be. Right. And likewise with your deep game. There's a spot where you can look into the face of all of this mystery and see the creativity and see the playfulness and see the wonder and the uncertainty, and be inspired by that, drawn by that, versus you can also be overwhelmed and scared and terrified and set aback and clenched up by that.
Or blind to it.
Yeah. Or doing it unconsciously. But some way this relationship between these kind of chunks. And so I think I'm coming to the idea that the shortest way to explain FourGame dynamics is to just explain it as relationships. Your short game is your relationship with your inner world. That is your mental space, your physical space, your emotional space. Right. Roughly, kind of, whatever lingo we want to call it. We will find a lot of places talking about that idea in one sense or another. I call that short game. It's your relationship with all of that. You also have a relationship with the outer world, with this stuff, with the ground, with the air, with the environment you're in, with the systems you're using it in, and the gadgets you're participating with. That's your mid game. your relationship with materials and environment. But then you've even got more relationships going on simultaneously. You've got a relationship with time and story, about who you are, where you come from, and where you're going, what my role is, and what her role is. And you've got all of this in your mind. You've got relationships with all of that. Right. And people have roles, and they have goals, and they have paths. And you've got this wonderful network, all in kind of the narrative idiom. You've got a relationship to that.
Yeah.
And you can access at any moment, too. But you've even got more relationship than that. You've got a deep game relationship. You've got a relationship to mystery and to metaphorics. Because what else are you going to do with mystery? Then make your best metaphoric pop at it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
As good as you can get into words, right? And somehow you've got a relationship and you can't not have it. You can't stare at mystery and not get a metaphoric pop. Even if it's nothing, no thing. I mean, maybe you can work real hard and not do it. But in those relationships, everyone has all the time, everywhere, simultaneously, at once. From a certain point of view, right? From that lens.
Right.
But it turns out, if you look at that point of lens and understand that, yeah, there's this flow of time, and these multidimensional something or others are kind of flowing through it with the inner, outer narrative and meta dimension. Mm-hmm. And I can kind of eyeball my way into metaing the meta a little and seeing that entirety as a FourGame, as a game that awareness can play. Well, the game awareness play completes. It's not a crisis. It's not a trap. Not all these things that should freak my emotional state out.
It's fun.
Fine, man. I've been working all day. Yeah. What are we doing? What game can we play? You know? Right. And that is kind of the field that gets up. This idea of games played in the field. But it could be, you can play a narrative thing that's played. You can do a play. You can play a piano. You can play a game. You know? So part of those game and play metaphorics are kind of bank shots to get you into the emotional space, which would then get your physical space and opens up your mental space and all the things so you can get the right vibe.
Right.
To get into that spot where your best performance is going to be when you're in that generative flow space. And then what FourGames is saying is like, hey man, if you can do that, you know, with your kung fu or with your surfing or with your whatever, can you do it on multiple dimensions at once? Can you simultaneously have a generative physical activity that's helping your environment, that's making you feel better, that's bringing you down toward the future that you know is positive, that's sometimes harmony with all your intuitions and uncertainties?
Right.
That's a yoga, right?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty sweet. Okay, what do you have in that dimension? And as an ideal, that each of these dimensions, once you can become aware of them, again, in a playful way, holding it loosely, in the way that I can hold a river, I put my hand in it. I'm not really holding the whole river.
Right.
Same idea. So once it's held tightly, you get into all these bad ways you could use this good gadget.
Right.
Right? Because someone can have a role. Oh, I got a role with a special gadget. No, so, you know, we're distinctively trying not to do that. And when you show people that they have it already, it goes from guru-ness to training partner-ness.
Yeah.
Real quick. Like, oh, I see, man. Like, yeah, you can look at my short game, look at my long game. Right? You can analyze me just as easily as I can analyze you.
Right.
Right? And then you're going to put me into your story. Oh, yeah, I ran this Jamie.
Yeah.
So there's something in just first being able to see it that soon enough, if you've got a playful attitude, you can't not want to fiddle with it. You can't not want to say, well, gosh, what if we made a card deck? You know, what if we explained it this way? And then you start to get the agency and you start to see how one effect over here can have this big effect over here.
Yeah.
What if I built a big game facility and had these kind of young, ambitious guys come with their projects, and from there they could spring? No, there's a mid-game way to do it, or whatever. So it feels like there's levels that then you can have influence of that just weren't available without the lens.
Right.
And that seems the value of it, because part of the problem that most people run into isn't that it's too tight, it's too chaotic. There's too much going on. There's too much overwhelm. It's just snowstorm.
Right.
And the virtue of a FourGame lens is, you're going to get me to that playful agency spot, but you're not going to delude me by having me miss some significant dimension. It's still going to be holistic. So I'm not going to turn into some tunnel vision person. And you're going to help bring out what's inside me. You're not going to hear kitty me all my life about what I'm missing and need that's somehow outside my awareness, outside these magnificent FourGames that you're coming into.
Yeah. Right?
And then once you kind of go through that, you see the value of that, of just the the gentle value of the language itself. Being able just to nudge your attention of all the things we could do. Just long gamey stuff, mid-gamey stuff, mid-gamey stuff this afternoon, long gamey stuff, right? Short gamey stuff, right? Now we're talking yellowy stuff.
I'm already improving. I didn't fall back on.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But all of that, realizing that all of that environment is not only out here, but you're connected to it. Your skin is as much a bridge as it is a barrier.
Right.
From a certain way of looking at it. And then metaphoric freedom up at top means you can look at it however the hell you want. Right? As long as you're emotionally congruent about it and you're not over, that's the playful bit. I'll hold my nerve for 10 seconds. No, let you know I was playing. Right? I mean, that's why I think there's a twinkle in the eye of like the spiritual guys.
Right.
Because what are they doing with you, right? They've got this, they've got your attention. They're trying to do you good. So they're playing with this mystery and metaphorics and stuff to kind of pull you down a path or get you on a story. May or may not be telling you, but it's, again, once you see the dimensions, you can interact with them. However, that's why the names don't really matter much. Once you get someone that says, we can talk whatever terminology you want. You want to talk Kabbalah, you want to talk Christianity, you want to talk psychology, whatever it is, you can find the language that they use. Because from a FourGame perspective, language is just a gadget.
Right.
Just prove, the more we use it, the more you'll prove my point that gadgets are important. When we see this gadget you love so much, we'll use your gadget. Talk about it through that way. I got another language gadget called FourGame. Sees it in a different way. We're not arguing or anything, but it's like, in this context, what gadget should we look through that will be more helpful given where we are? And I think a lot of people in the modern world suffer from what you need is a holistic view of things. It gives you some agency, calms you down, and gets you onto a sincere long game path that's actually going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And the gadget that FourGames is that little mental yellow framework in the back of your mind. It's like, what if we put in this little funny way of looking things? Right in the yellow space. You've already got a lot of yellow paradigms in there already, I know. Here's just another one. What if you click to that one and just assume you look at things through that? That's where Captain Simple comes in. What would Captain Simple do? Captain Simple would only look through FourGames. Captain Simple, right? You have 100 things to travel around. Right? So from that perspective, and then play as if through there. And that's that way you play sincerely, not too seriously, but you play sincerely, but you hold that frame. And that's what I think for me, like the Captain Simple archetype is.
Yeah. What
would the archetypal character do that did this to an extreme? For whom it was the extent of it. Oh, Captain Simple, who would never not think of FourGame dynamics. Where in practice, most people, once you get the gist, you never have to again because you've internalized it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm probably talking too much, but...
No, that's great.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So does that make sense? Yeah. And not for them so much, but just for you.
No, absolutely for me. All about it. Yes. I like to say, so at the start of each video, my little catchphrase, at least for me, is welcome back. We're going to think simple, have fun, and get things done with FourGame dynamics. But it's like the thinking is 1/3 of it. The thinking, like, think about it if you need to, but think about it simply and do it less than you're having fun and getting things done, right? And it's like, if you can think simple and have fun, you're already getting things done, is kind of my conceit. But,
you can start from a lot of people for whom that sentiment makes absolute stunning common sense.
Yeah.
And then just from that idea of start anywhere, can we start there?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to work back and demonstrate to you why this gadget is going to get you to that having fun way of looking at it. And I'm going to demonstrate, it's not going to be by teaching you something. I'm going to get it to you by a non-obvious way. By the end, you won't be able to unring the bell.
Yeah.
And you'll have it in your bones. And when I say, check out the mid-game on that guy, you'll know what I mean.
So,
or whatever. And so there's that teaching where I think you're saying it's a difference in teaching style too. Another bit you're going to say is, again, do the magic trick right up front. I've got this funny model that's not like anything else, so take a look at it. I don't want to deceive you or anything. And I've got this funny teaching style I use with it.
Yeah.
So now if you do that, the role that we're going to have here in this process is X to Y. But for me, that's getting your long game roles tidied up real quick, getting the attention on the gadgets you're going to use, and get the attention on the next couple steps you're going to take. So that's already just lining up FourGames, again, in a generatively helpful way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay.
So good to you. You'll be doing all your FourGame training way before they probably know you're introduced to the terms. That's why it's the start anywhere.
Yeah.
Start anywhere, man. We're in a bubble, and it doesn't matter. And then the secret of one of the things, the secret start anywhere, that the teacher knows, it's a twinkle in his eyes. Start anyway because we're already halfway in.
Right.
And you're going to be relieved because you're like, we're in the middle? already?
Yeah.
And then you feel that physical, no, we're starting at the top of the mountain, talking about all the ways down.
You're the fish.
We're not at
by the other fish.
We're not the emotion of being at the bottom of the mountain and having to come up and being tired, juxtaposed with, no, I understand you think that, but we're already at the part where at the top you get down.
Yeah.
Because you've already grokked FourGame dynamic.
Right.
And so now I get that sensation of, which everyone's clenched because they're going to learn something new, and I already know so much more, and it's just threatening. So I think there's something really easy about this. These 4 things aren't going to exclude, they're going to include. And you're coming down the mountain. And all those years you went up the mountain and walking with that stick, learning this and learning that, and looking up the mountain. And finally you get up to the top of the mountain. And if you turn around, lo and behold, behind you the whole time, you'll have seen all this stuff that you've got a lot of options. And also going up the mountain, your legs have become strong. And you've got the stick. Now you can come down the other side of that mountain. And say, I'm going over there, I'm going down there. And I'm going to be heading up steam downside. The grinding up the mountain has given me my gadget, has made me what I can do now when I get to the next part of the story, which is now take that gadget you've earned and go do whatever it is with it. And that role in your relationship with whatever gadget is, with a paintbrush or a sword or anything, is part of your long game role that's going to have a relation to your mid game creation, which is going to validate your actual role. Well, that is what I am. Made my thing.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, can't not, so there's it gets, once it gets intuitive, you see it everywhere and you see it partially, explained.
Right.
And therefore we slice chaos into a few dimensions, and I'm just trying to give them reps in each dimension.
Okay.
And so I'll start with this. Okay. So like that, imagine that. Right. And now.
This is cool.
Right. So now.
I don't think it will work on it. Oh, yeah, it does. Ooh.
Fancy. Look at me.
So if I was really going to be like the most snarky, it'd be, okay, you're going to do our FourGame try. We'll try to see as little as possible. I'm like, you just hand you the sword, and then give you these. And kind of like those glasses, what do you see when you look out at anything on those glasses?
There's a lightsaber now. Yeah, this is cool. I see, rainbow spectrum on everything, right?
Everywhere you look, right?
Everywhere, yeah.
And there's nowhere you can look that they aren't.
If there was a rainbow and everywhere has a... Oh, that's odd. There's 4 reflections outside my hand. So I have, the main hand and then the 4 hands.
And reliably, if you look behind yourself really quickly, it still has it, right?
Yeah.
You can't escape it. And everything simultaneously has these dimensions going on.
Right?
Well, kind of like that. FourGames is a lens, kind of like that. Now, if you assume that all those dimensions are still there, you can look at them anytime. But you can take off the glasses, and you only need the glasses when you really want to see them.
And then, but what if
And then you go one further and say, now any of those dimensions particularly interest you? Or where's your mind, what do you attention now? Wherever your attention is now, I don't know, where is your attention now? Is it on this? You tell me what's up. Where do you want to look first?
My attention's on the green stuff, honestly, because we're in, just out there, that's the most beautiful view I've ever seen. And mid-game is stuff you can touch, we're a bit far away from it, but, that's beautiful. This whole ground is beautiful.
All right, so put on your mid-game glasses.
Okay, let's, can we get, the mountain in the green? And the green goblin.
Yeah, 1 second. Sorry, Jamie, this is what you gotta do for the video. Okay.
It is really quickest way. You go from rainbow down to colors. And then so now you've already grokked the idea without much words that everything you look at can have these multiple dimensions happening simultaneously that aren't obvious with every gadget. And you can pretend that those are kind of always around. You can do that. And then you can say, gosh, with all those dimensions, we're going to symbolically represent that, hey, those are all the dimensions of reality. And we can start anywhere we want. Mm-hmm. And they represent the inner, outer, narrative, and metaphoric sense of what's going on. And so now we'd say, again, stretching the metaphor of lenses and looking through things. We've manifested these little gadget toys that also reinforces that metaphor. And then now you put those on and you're looking through them.
Right.
I'm not looking through them. I'm looking at a dude in green glasses.
They match my pants.
But what the conceit is that those green glasses are there to draw your attention to the mid-game that you're looking at.
Right.
You could look at any dimension of what you're looking at. And it's easy to get distracted. But what that is trying to do, if we now look around here, we just notice weird mid-game stuff, unusual mid-game things.
Right.
Right? What does the mid game tell you about the guy whose environment this is? Think of all the lessons Sherlock Holmes could learn about just looking at all the mid game.
Well, I'm standing on a Captain America shield. You got martial arts shit everywhere. We made that cool punching bag we're going to talk about later. There are a bunch of books not only on like martial arts, but also on games and game theory and storytelling. So I mean, obviously your metaphor is games. So you're both playful, but also very competitive. And looking at all this different stuff, you have normal weight training equipment, you have gymnastics, you have all this shit. Like, you want to be competitive in as many ways as possible. You want to be able to be useful while having fun, and drop him anywhere. He wants to be good to go.
Right on, right?
Okay.
From your mid-game glasses, right?
Right.
Bang, now take off your mid-game glasses.
Okay.
Pick any other glasses you want, and look at any other thing you want. And you're also starting to demonstrate your agency of, hey man, I can look at anything I want through any lens I want. And look at all those insights that just popped up.
Let's do the blue ones now. Okay. So these are long game.
It's a long game. And I look around and go, what's the story around here? What role does everybody think they're doing? What the...
Well,
and what's your story in this? It's like you've run into all these characters and all this stuff.
right.
What does this play where you're going? How is this going to be in the rear view soon enough?
Well, this
Right?
is meta as hell because from an actual storytelling content perspective, this is issue 1 of the John comic book, and he's meeting Spider-Man or whatever. He's meeting Nick Fury, and Nick Fury's going, "Hey, there's this whole wide world of superheroes and supervillains out there, and you have this power. And hey, if you team up with Captain America, you can do that. If you team up with Thor, you can do that, and go do it." And this would be like Professor X's school or home for the gifted or whatever it's called, and this is like sort of the first meeting of the X-Men or first meeting of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'd say that's kind of where it is in your story, but also in mine, which is interesting. And yeah, as a first episode, it's like, cool, we've set up the story. Now I'm going to go out and have my run of comics.
Because there's something fundamental archetypal about that whole piece that is just in a certain idiom. That's in the Marvel idiom.
Yeah.
But it's at the beginning of this. This is the part of the story where the old guy gives the young guy some gadget before he goes off on his adventure.
Right.
And is either like, I'm too old, here, take my sword and you do it. Or here, I'll go with you for one last ride. And then the old timer dies, the young guy, that's the archetypal generational story.
Right.
That you're always a part of, right? Because you're always kind of, long game wise, we're always a part of these kind of two stories. Your own story from childhood to youth to adulthood to elderhood, right? You're all on that ride, right? And then also simultaneously that cultural ride as you go through and the generations fill in behind you, And so that long game is kind of the long game you can't escape, because that long game is going to be reflected by the mid game you're in. Systems and gadgets and parking lots and stores and all these realities are going to change underneath your feet as you go through this long game journey from youth to elderhood. And the generational and our generations change their positional dynamics, their role in leadership and what's going on in their ascendancy and whatnot.
Right.
So seeing through those lenses, you can start to see kind of multiple levels of story, both forward and backward. And you can see the idea of what happens when people feel like that story forward is either good or in their control enough versus dreaded and out of their control.
Right.
There's a lot that goes on in there. If your long game is just like, I'm not looking forward to what's coming ahead. I believe that's what's coming ahead. The rest of your games will clinch up accordingly.
Well, and so then with the deep game ones on the metaphor, the fact that we were just talking about the mid and the long game in terms of like all the Marvel stuff and storytelling.
Well, first, even that, if we put on deep game, just mystery itself, the fundamental weirdness.
Yeah.
Just grok them. The inexplicable, ineffable, the stuff. That, right?
Yeah.
That everyone has. You can't talk about it, but that's where you start. Real. Now, what do you want to call that? Because there you start with a camaraderie of like, there's going to be no status games. We're all in the mystery soup.
Well, because
unless you know something about it, in which case, by all means, tell. In which case, it's hang me with your own rope about how much you know about mystery. Right. So it's that, I think, is where the deep game really comes in, because you get a humility with that. On the far side of mystery is humility. Oh, okay, and also creativity on the playful side of it. So I think if, you got to kind of let go of that certain know-it-allness or certainty of it, and not trying to make uncertainty or mystery wrong.
Right.
That itself is a metaphoric frame on this thing. Don't kid yourself. You don't know. It's more than right or wrong, And I think being able to hold that loosely allows you to have a lot more fun at the other games.
Yeah.
Because if that metaphoric is sacred or literal and unmovable, well, it blocks you up downstream.
Well, and like, if you were unconscious about this part, if you just had the glasses, the deep game metaphor that maybe you would absorb through media or schooling or whatever it is, I could be standing here going, oh shit, this guy ran a major company. He's like my boss, and super serious, and he's above me, and obviously there's respect, of course, but when you put these on, it's more like, okay, this motherfucker has a punching bag with an equal sign on it. What the hell does that mean? There's Hulk glove holding his books. This guy is clearly fun and funny, and there's a goofy, playful element to it. And the fact that we're all here is like, okay, he could be choosing to run FourGames, whether you want to call it a business or a movement or whatever, a school, whatever it is. He could be running that the way he runs a corporation under that metaphor. He could be running it like, I'm the boss. The goal is money. This is that. Or you put these on and you go, but what if instead of more like a company, it was more like games and like stories and like these fun things? We can still get the same stuff done, but we'll feel a lot better doing it. So that's cool. Okay. So
and then keep going.
All right. Okay. So yellow is the mental, right? All three of these are short game.
Yep.
Okay. So this is the thinking.
Just look at particularly your mental space. What's going on in your mental, now you can look, because now you get into self, other, and forward and backward. My mental space, other person's mental space of now, mental space of the future, mental space of the past.
Right.
Hypothetical mental space. Just that whole realm. It's not quite a story yet. It just, those thoughts just popping up. You making them pop up. You notice them just detaching a little bit from them. Right? Because if you're just looking from the emotion, we haven't slammed the emotional part in them yet. That's the next part, right? Because you'll notice here, there's an emotional charge with all those ideas. We're putting the light on the intellectual part.
Yeah.
We could put the charge on the emotional part. There's even a physical part to those ideas, where those ideas hit you in your gut. Think about death. Think about infinity. Think about whatever, right? You could put ideas in your head. Right. You'll have emotional and physical reactions, which is why the mind and the body and emotions are all swirled up. You can't really separate one out,
right?
Other than when you're playing around, right? Try to give me a thought without a feeling. Show me a feeling. They kind of mutually arise, and that's why it's all gamey, not science.
Okay, well, if I had to do that real quick, I'll grab all three of these. It would be body, emotions.
Well, yeah. Well, right? Take a look. Look at just the ideas of FourGame.
Yep.
Look at FourGame. Now, what are an object in your awareness now?
Okay.
Boom. Now just look at FourGames, and this is where the challenge is, because it can be so many things conceptually. You can see it as all these things, right? As a gadget, and you can see all these potential long games. Right?
Yeah.
But if you just look at the ideas of it, the components of it, that would be looking at it just conceptually.
Okay.
And struggling sometime with how am I going to define it? Now, what it is, what it isn't, what it's not, what it leads to, what it comes from. A lot of that's in that yellow space. That's what you're doing in there. You're looking at something, trying to figure out that.
Right.
Right? Because it's a mysterious something or other. What the hell is it? And you've got a metaphor for it, but you want more. You really want to know what it is. You're going to discover by the end. The is connects everything to everything, which messes with your identity part of like this idea that the separate agency that we're playing.
Yeah.
So you can play that game too,
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, truthfully, like the big we had a false start with one of our videos. We ended up reusing it for something else, but like I only had these on, and I was thinking so much about like, okay, yeah, FourGames, I can explain it simply in 5 minutes or less. That's great, but at first it seemed like, this is a huge task to simultaneously explain it and make it fun and blah, blah, blah. And that started eliciting the red glasses of like, insecurity. And now I'm not explaining it as well.
And sometimes she's listening with these.
Right.
Right. She's like, what are you talking about? that kind of sense. And you don't have to language it. You can't language the emotional part. So you're not going to get anything very satisfying from me.
Right.
I'm just giving you this emotional sense that you're going to want to know more about. And I'm just going to be, what's going on?
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Right.
That's a very interesting point, I think.
But so then looking through emotion, now looking through the emotional lens, and then a quick thing about, you tell me if this is true, that charisma is basically being able to transfer the emotional energy from one person to the other.
Yeah.
So, right? It's in this realm. So if I'm charismatic and I walk in a room and I'm upbeat and cheerful, everybody's upbeat and cheerful. If I walk in a room and I'm upbeat and cheerful and that guy over there is quiet, and then suddenly we all get quiet, he's charismatic.
Oh, that's an interesting way. Oh, okay. I
Right?
like that.
That's so you can see people follow the emotional. Again, you can take a traditional term and say FourGame wise, what the hell's going on there? Right? And so you see it all the time with stand-up comedy, right?
Yeah.
If you can get them into your attitude, your short game attitude, which doesn't have to make sense. It's not science, and however you get there doesn't matter. Because it doesn't have to be linguistic, it doesn't have to be logical. And if you pick a role, hey, I'm the Joker, my job's not to be logical. I'm already ahead.
Right.
Or whatever, you get to be paradoxical and playful, which is effectively moving around the FourGames so it almost makes sense, but so it doesn't exactly.
Right.
But you can navigate through that, and you know that if you can navigate a FourGame that has a consistent metaphoric all the way down to the body, that's going to make a certain amount of sense. But if you start mixing it up in there, you'll know that those things are incongruent, like pieces of a puzzle that don't go together, or Rubik's Cube, and that'll feel funny.
Well, that's
right. I know that if I go and twist your mid-game, even if everything else right, I know that that's going to show up in your emotion.
Yeah. Well, that's what I realized is when I was I was overthinking some of the videos at first. And then I realized wait a minute, what's my job in the video is not to be a walking encyclopedia explaining and contextualizing everything, because once they have enough exposure to the idea of FourGames, they'll do that. And the professional who's explaining fitness or mindset, they'll handle that part. They'll handle the context. So all I need to do is be 1/3 tour guide, 1/3 guinea pig, 1/3 comic relief, and cool. I don't have to worry about explaining it. I can just have fun.
And have a spin in the long game future that you'll have certainty of. When I come back, you'll know they'll have made progress.
Yeah.
And you'll know that before they know that. And you'll have a twinkle in your eye that says, what I've done is so effective now, you're going to feel like a chiropractor. You're going to feel better now. Pop, 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 pop.
Sure.
Next time I see you, you'll have felt better for 2 weeks and you're going to really thank me. And so there's a little bit of, that satisfaction of teaching, which any teacher has when their method works. Mm-hmm. But FourGame has this nice timeline dimension.
Mm-hmm. The world's on fire.
It hurts. And then last but not least, the
last
body.
one, now we work out, right?
The physical one. Yeah, let's work. Yeah.
Okay, so now all of that does, I feel like I've done most of my teaching, really, but you've done it, think about what me as a teacher has done. Mm-hmm. And I've gone a long way to explain it more than I normally would, because you're going to be a teacher someday.
Right.
Right? But normally, all you really have to do is get them to appreciate there's a mysterious something or other. We're going to playfully name it for practical and useful purposes. Mm-hmm. We've done it this and so. Get them feel it from the inside out. Right? Each one of those. So it's not me telling them. Now, where's the pain? Where's your attention? And now we can start anywhere, knowing that this dynamic is going to give way over time to some entirely new, different dynamic. Everything's always changing. And then now, now we're just talking about how we want to influence it, and we're already in a place of agency.
Right.
So you can explain all of that, or you can just say, dude, come to my mid-game, we'll work on your FourGames, and I can put a sword in your hand and start attacking you and talking at you and making you react.
Right.
So
we do all that, or cool, now we got a sword in our hand.
Anyway, given who it is, if it was
Emma's version,
I would start
John's version.
And that's where the teacher, the fun is there's a conversational FourGame, I find, to it, that allows you to combine all your other skill sets. You don't have to do it all in FourGame lingo, and you can do it with nothing at all. But you just know that structurally, you need to get from this state of affairs to this state of affairs. And it's all coming from them, not you. And so you're skillfully surfacing, making sure you're aiming them in the right direction and giving them chunks that are manageable along the way.
Okay.
Because you just don't want to give them the endpoint and then leave them. And now it's like, great, I feel as powerless as ever. Yeah. And now I feel dumb because it should be simple. Right? And that's why you have to like change the mid-game environment immediately. So now when I wake up tomorrow, it's a different place.
Right.
And that reinforces something. You look at all that kind of habit-broken books. That works. So, but here's one of my favorite exercises. And given all that, the martial arts piece that I think is the most interesting is the idea, and I'm not a martial arts master, okay. But the idea of the center, FourGame-wise, is the idea of the center line. You familiar with the idea of the center line?
Tell me.
Okay. Well, each of us as an object in space, right? We have a center line running straight down us, facing out this way, right? So if I get this way, you're looking that way, your center line's going that way, my center line's going this way. So if you do this, for instance, that's your center line, right? So if you walk forward and I walk forward, that's where our direction is taking us. Okay?
Right.
So that's an important thing. So you and I both have a center line. Right? In martial arts, one of the important things is you put out your center line. I want to get off your center line. You can't hurt me. And I want to destroy your center line.
Okay.
Right? So there's this idea of, if it's simple, just this, we've got these two coming at us, right? And you're trying to get out of my way. And I'm trying to get out of your way.
Okay.
So just that, right? Just like, okay. And you go, oh, there you got me now. Oh,
right. Okay.
So you're trying to get off my center line. You're trying to get off my center line. There, and boom. Okay. Okay. So there's something about just that basic idea that is, get out of the way. Right? Fundamentally, get the big chunk out of the way. Right?
Okay.
So there's something interesting to me that FourGame-wise physically, right? Because now I want to correspond physical movement to some of these ideas and ways of thinking and attitudes. I'm a kinesthetic guy. I want to now take what I've learned and put it into movement somehow, because then I can train the movement.
Right.
And, which I like to do, and get a little benefit down the line. I used to be a pole vaulter. Pole vaulter training. I like to train a couple dimensions of things specifically.
Yeah.
Right. So in the same way, there's a little bit of that.
So some people, if you do that to me again,
yep.
Let's say you're the crisis of being and complexity. The correct move is that, but most people go.
Yeah. Here. You do have something to be scared of.
But you don't turn away from it.
And now you have choices. This is where the next idea of tempo comes in.
Okay.
So now in sword fighting, there's the idea of tempo, of either I'm attacking you, I'm coming at you, and you're responding to me, or you're coming to me, and I'm getting out of your way. Right? And we're trying to control who's coming at who. Right? Okay. And if I'm coming at you, your first job is to get out of the way, and then second is to turn the tables. Right? Okay. So there's the idea of tempo, which is who's got kind of the initiative. So there's that and tempo. And there's another idea, which is there's the idea of a 4 quadrants. So I've got your center line. Mm-hmm. If I were to cross you this way, I'd have a quadrant here, quadrant here, quadrant here, quadrant here, and all up your center line. Okay, right? So now we've got one more dimension. If you just plant your hands and do this, and just do a little bit of this, this dangerous power of yours is really a zone everywhere between your feet. Because you can generate a lot. Instead, you could of course hit me this way. Right. But you can also do that. Get a lot of strength. So I really want to stay out of this whole field. Okay. Right? Of course I don't want to get that. But you've got this whole ball of front-end energy, right? And FourGame-wise, you can imagine what that is. That's attitude. That's physicality. That's long game. There's a lot coming at me. Right. Whoa. I may be coming at you with my intellectual stuff, or maybe coming at you physically. So you should put all those together. You've got this interesting physical bit of I've got a center line that I can twist this way, right? And that I can then defend these different corners. So now you've got these different areas to block, right? Just like that. And so one of the things I think is really important to get that emotional sense in the modern world, the equivalent of this, is you've got a lot coming at you, because it doesn't make any sense. You're not going to have time to think about it. Right. You're just going to have to be comfortable with shit coming at you. And that's cool, because you know what happens when stuff comes at you? You learn the next lesson. Once you block it, now look, pop. And the feeling of, oh shit, versus bop, is you take the tempo. Now once you have the tempo, what you really do is you have FourGame control. You've taken the tempo of the fight, you can also take the tempo of the story. You can take the tempo of the environment, you can take the tempo of whatever you're in. Because your goal now is, instead of one being reactive, there you go. Now things coming at you, you react to in a different way because you've got all these different long game options. Yeah, there you go. So now it's so one different. So now you realize, Dan, you are a dangerous man within this zone, right?
Right.
And then you could say, you take that guy, and you have principles. You got a center line, you've got that, you've got my 4 quadrants. Now your reach with that gadget is a whole, you know a lot about sword fighting without knowing anything about sword fighting.
Right.
Right? And there's a lot of things like that, right? Because you're just trying to get rid of my center, you're like, crush my center line or stack. Right? And so now you've got tempo. And me, like that. And so there's really something about, you can't quite get enough of just getting poked at. While you're now if I want to talk to you about your long game, it's like, all right, so now tell me about this company you're going to go. Right?
Okay.
Right?
Well, let's start with some videos with the guy in the mountains.
Well, and it starts with me as a teacher having fun, right?
Right.
Right, there you go, right?
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter. I want to get your heart rate up and get you moving, but I want to get you the idea of gadgets, the idea of roles, the idea of responding is fun. And once you get unconscious mastery, none of it's scary. And then I'm going to have you practice that in a million different ways so you can get the hang of it.
And it's like if your brain is in more of a play mode rather than like, I'm sitting here taking a math test, like, what's my business plan? It's more like, and it's like, you know that feeling when we're messing around with swords? Yeah. You're kind of having fun, but you're kind of feeling aggressive, but you feel like you're in control and you're not too worried? Right.
But we're going to take that from the orange realm and put it in the blue realm.
Okay.
Now you've got a kind of like.
Yeah.
Now you've got a rich kind of like that I know, that I've experienced, that I can trust. I can say, you know what, get your long game together. Well, it's kind of like the way you use that. And you've just demonstrated that.
Yeah.
Before I explained it to you. You know, I get 10 minutes before I hand you a sword, I can give you that, do it, and then tell you afterwards. Yeah, except we're already halfway in. Right? Does that make sense?
You tricky man.
I know it makes it more fun to be a teacher. But you're going to be soon enough, but you have to make it attractive because the teachers need to challenge too. As a teacher, your skill as a teacher, I think, or anyone's skill, is going to be really being generative and nice about that.
Okay.
So what I've done, the way I like to teach, you can do it totally different, is now I've got the freedom to do this, right? And you're going to be able to. There you go.
That was fun.
There you go. So you start to get this sense, which then translates into FourGames. If I've got this zone of attention, just like Kung Fu, right? That if I position myself, I can generate a lot of force and influence. But it matters a lot of my positioning,
Right.
But the basics everybody has, and you can get into immediately, and you can experiment in a fun way, where you can get that emotional charge of what success looks like, and then transfer to a different realm. And then you start to appreciate how different gadgets affect you differently. For instance, now, instead of just one sword, right now I've got my center line here, right?
Yeah.
And protect my quadrants, right? Now, what if I put this away and I let you open up your hands? Same idea. But now, imagine you've got tennis balls in your elbows, which you're trying to keep ribs safe, but you've got this kind of circular, you can do all this up and down, you can do all that, right? That circular elbow bit now, and then you can still extend, but you've got a little bit of a lawnmower going on here. Say that bit, and then you can strike forward. My quadrants, I got a real challenge. Yeah, exactly. So now that's different, but notice how also what I've done, again, I've given you the feeling of simple. Now you can block with one hand. So, easy, right? So an example of a different gadget expanding your long game options, right? Couldn't do that with one.
Right.
No matter how much you positively thought about it, no matter how much you felt about it. Right? And then, so now that starts to get you very conscious of your physical body and space dynamics, and conscious of gadgets, and conscious how gadgets open up possibilities, and conscious how this whole show kind of just metaphorically feels to you. And I find people who really have their shit together, consciously or unconsciously, are pretty happy with that and pretty not freaked out about uncertainty. Because it makes the fun. You couldn't do it like this if certainty was a big. There you go. And then the trick is me going slow and having a partner that's going slow. There you go. And then now, as a trainer, I can wait for a lot of those movements because I'm trying to get you reps. And then I'm going to try to keep some of those reps to, that's what it likes when you nail that meeting. That's what it's like when you win your second Spartan race. That's whatever.
Right.
And then your 4-game training is just the training's over. You're just touching base every day, keeping your long game, making sense with your mid game, making sense with your deep. You can fit for moments, you know. And then you can make all sorts of exercises. Okay, so now I'll add an element, which is then music. Now we can add a long game, right? So now that's your mind. Now think about long game. I'm going to give you some music. Think of the music that inspires you, fires you up, gets your body going.
Okay.
Right? So now we're going to say, take some of those songs, and we're going to pretend that those songs are you talking to universe, deep game. That's a song to mystery itself. So the relationship of that song, we're going to include you into it, and instead of whatever shallow thing it's talking about, we're going to assume it's talking about deep, profound, metaphoric things. You'll see. And then you're just going to let the vibe, energy of whatever that is, go through you. But in your mind, know that there's some long game link, a symbol, an archetype, a vibe that you can reliably know. I play that song, bing, this pops up. That pops up. This one makes me think, this one makes me sad, this one gets me jumpy, this one da-da-da. So you're looking at whatever those, you know that effect, that's already true. But then you're saying, okay, I'm going to look at that song from a story point of view. What is it about the story that song is telling? Or what is it about the way that they're directing my 4-games that's working so well on me? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then you're going to have some songs that just for whatever reason resonate with you that are then a tool for you to explain to somebody else. And again, gives them an opportunity to go find your own song that affects you as much as this one did me. You'll have some in this journey that you've been pounding in your head over and over. And those songs are the gadgets. Think of music as almost emotionally triggering gadgets. Mm-hmm. Right? Listen to that gadget that pokes up. But also, in addition to that, we want to make it not only poke up emotions, but poke up some kind of long game relationship that's generative to you.
Okay.
It's supportive, you know. And then I time that up with what we're doing. And then you're trying to get you into just this nice reactive zone where your mind is simultaneously doing physical defense and lost in this song that you're trying to put together in a 4-game way. And let all of that try to occupy your brain at once, kind of like going into a metaverse thing.
Okay.
Submerge yourself in something where you can be hypersensitive to. You're very conscious of the physical stuff you're doing. You're conscious of the weird gadgets you've got. You're conscious of the fact you've never done it before. Now be conscious of the fact of the emotional reaction to this new stimulation we're going to put on here. Okay. And then also why your teacher would pick that song for you.
Okay.
But it would presumably be something that means something from them. So there's a relationship or a responsibility of you at some point. You're going to have to do this to someone else, but you'll have a whole playlist of songs. It will be yours, and part of the gadget they need to give you. I want your playlist sometime. I'm sick of my playlist. Okay. Right?
You're not going to like my playlist. It's all like Machine Gun Kelly and that's it. It's mostly just trashy punk rock.
Okay. And then what does that elicit for you mostly?
Feeling like I'm 14 again.
Okay, and which gives you like short game energy song.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Do you have a long game vision song or two that gets you, or nostalgic for your youth or any of those? Or is it all high energy? Bup, bup, bup?
A lot of the music I listen to is super high energy. Oh God, you'd know better than me. Do I have a long game song?
Is there any classic old stuff you like?
Yeah, what's something that like you listen to and it just brings you back to something? I would go to that.
Power or a story. It doesn't even have to be
like
a good
Passion
song.
Pit. The other day you said a Passion Pit song.
Some of them are just catchy songs that you don't even like, but you're like, oh, there's something in there.
The song "It's Not My Fault I'm Happy" by Passion Pit is a good one. That came in at a critical part of my long game story. And I revisit it. It's like a 10-year-old song, but...
Oh, okay, exactly. That one. Go revisit that one in the light of what we do.
Okay.
Think of if you were going to play that for someone and use that as an example, a personal example about FourGames and how it does to you.
Gotcha.
Right now, I can use that as a stepping stone to talk about the time in my life when I did that.
Okay.
And it's idiosyncratic, and I don't have to explain it. I just like that song. I know nobody else does. It means something to me. I also do it 100 times. Whatever, you know.
Okay.
But that's, again, another physical gadget that you can use to bridge for people.
Okay.
If that makes sense?
Yeah.
So as you're going through your life, be conscious of collecting these songs. These are kind of the soundtrack of your long game of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be able to go back and say, oh, not only was I listening to that, I just listened to that kind of stuff as a part of some bigger thing. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
So all right. So I've got tons. I've got all the songs of 25 years of, that I've got all.
I've got
old timer songs. But
I'd be interested to see what kind of song you picked for me.
All right. Okay. This will be fun. I've got a bunch.
And it's good you have headphones because, we can play anywhere.
Well, and the thing, we can.
Whatever.
I'll give you one. I'll be curious what you hear this. You should have heard. If you haven't heard, then.
These are good.
But you can do it very light. You can song-wise, you can imagine. It can be very light. It can be very direct. It can be very obtuse. It can be, I don't really have a meaning. I was just playing with you. You tell me what it is. But It's a good opportunity for the teacher to send the student off on a journey of their own where they get to come back and react.
Okay.
And then if you mix it with a physical activity, the set isn't 1, 2, 3. The set is to the end of the song. So one set is going to be listening to that 3-minute song.
Okay.
And you're kind of trying to download or distill the FourGame wisdom in that song that's hidden in the silliness or hidden in the whatever. If you were to take it as a profound conversation with the other, what's it? Can you make it that way? Can you see it in that light and pull something useful?
Yeah.
It? Or if you're like, nope, it's just candy gum pop. No, there's nothing there. But some of them you can pull from, and then you can get the kind of the long game message or something comes out of it in addition to the emotional piece, and then it becomes a tool in your tool belt that you can use.
Right.
That's personal.
Okay.
That makes sense? All right. See where else this one goes. So many choices. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to play this. You're just going to work on your FourGames, coming at you gently. Nothing, but just, I won't be talking to you.
Okay.
Just reacting. If there's a certain dimension you want to be looking through, here you go. Do this. And you're just trying to make your body fluid with the song or your attitude or something. And there's no wrong way to do it.
FourGame van.
And
I just thought of me and Garrett are going to go to trade shows and make videos. And at one point I was just like, and we're going to come from there, go there, come from there, go there. But it's going to be fun. So that was cool.
Gotcha. But you can see the power in that whole way of doing it. And if I start with a song that means something to you, and work backwards. So, hey, you already bring the emotion to the song.
Right.
And in some story, I'm just going to bring a physical movement that we're going to use to get reps so you can make that physical movement. And we're going to put it in the context because, gosh, that song sure already does a lot. We got a gadget here that reinforces the long game that gets you to a good emotional state. So it's we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and again, starting with where you already are. Like, hey, what are you already listening to now? What's in your on your player now? That idea. Oh. But so there's a whole relationship with music and with emotion. And then it's interesting, there's a whole school where the deep game metaphor is music. Mm-hmm. Right? And that is pretty common. Can I give you one more song and a different exercise?
Yeah. Sure.
It'll give you that. It gives you that.
No, don't switch hats.
So that was giving you a little bit of long game energy, a little bit of short game energy. We got projects here, we got long time to go.
Yeah.
All that, you could see what that was doing. Nice and simple, trying to make a project, give you an energy that you could then bring forward. At least when I was doing business, that was short time to get there. Come on, boy. Attitude. That attitude is was kind of what I was trying to pound in.
Yeah.
Right? And you need that for that next. Again, because I'm trying to frame it, because I need that framing as part of the way I want to frame things.
Yeah.
Come on, man, hurry up. This is important. Chop, chop.
Okay.
But so here's another one, let's see, where you could aim it specifically for your deep game metaphor. I have this one. This is the perfect time.
You could have put on the deep game glasses.
Yeah. And it makes it really fun to go back and listen to old music just with those lenses because you feel, as a FourGame tool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like we have this idea of the walkout song for like fighters or performers or whatever, and this is like that's like one instance of this, but you could take the thing that makes that work and do it in any context. Which is kind of what people do. They work out to music they like, but it's not, go deeper with it.
Well, that's the idea of kind of drafting what they're already doing. They're already in a gym. They already think about fitness. They've already got headphones on. They're already listening to music. So for me, that expanding that fitness metaphor makes so much sense because it's like, hey, man, the people who are already, you're 80% of the way there.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're already got you're already in the realm of the right gadgets with the right mindset. You know. So this one is a deep game musical bit, right? So I'm going to give you a metaphoric bit. So this is, you talked about music. Now, some people's deep game of the whole thing is music.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's going on in the whole metaphoric universe? It's all kind of like music. So here's a song that gives that perspective, which then you see will have a certain different attitude from a different way I could spin it. You could spin on song. Yeah.
That was fun. That was very fun. That's interesting.
Right? I don't know what you call that. It's not quite a trance, not quite a skillful I don't know what it is, but there's just spending time and space in there.
Yeah.
With a FourGame lens on, with a physical thing going on in the background. It helps you use them all at once, or play with them all at once a little bit, and feel how you can get energy from the song.
Yeah.
Certain kinds of energy from the song that help, It's just interesting.
Elliot Hulse used to tell me when you meditate, keep your mind on two things. So if you're sitting, focus your energy on your butt's in the chair and the sunlight's on your face. And if you can keep two things in your head and do it repetitively, so add breathing to it, your mind it won't be empty, but it will be filled with a lack of what was there before. So with that, there's the song and focusing on the words. And at first you go, she said the word is, so you literally hit that, but eventually it gets more abstract than that if you know the song maybe. So you're focusing on the song, and you're focusing on what am I hitting based on color and symbol, and you're repetitively moving. You totally, anything that was in your head before is gone. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, it occupies a bunch of dimensions at once.
Yeah.
But not too much.
Yeah.
And then you come away with it feeling like you branded or experienced something, or somehow there's a residue of it was a generative experience.
Yeah.
I'll remember the entirety of that. Like a good workout or something.
Yeah, and it is it's kind of like a dance too. Yeah.
But then I feel like there's a whole art thing of teachers better than me, just working within that space and what you can do with music and what people already have.
Right.
So movement people and dance people. Those fields start overlapping and get really fun really fast.
Yeah.
People in the circus.
Yeah, so the other day you were having us build this and Garrett and I had to go out and get all these different colors of tape before it was all gray. Have you been with this little gadget here for a long time, or what's the significance of it for you?
Yeah, but in my early days, I was trying to externalize this. I was kind of grappling with how to conceptualize it, and I had bitten off more than I could chew. And part of what I was trying to do was make some of this intuitive. I was kind of where you were. I knew it was valuable, and I knew it made sense, and I knew I needed reps. And I knew once I got to conscious, mastering or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to do too, but there's no way through it except reps. So hurry up and get going, and I'll make those reps pleasant and generative. For me, Jamie Combs, what do you need to do? So that was kind of me self-diagnosing early, and then I externalized it into a gadget. Because one of the things I needed to do was get rid of all this physical energy running this business. It was winding me up. And I knew you could channel it, having been a trainer, you could channel it in all sorts of ways. And I appreciated it as a really useful asset. What am I going to do with it? Trying to get a gadget to harness it. And then also, I had a lot of things on my mind. And simultaneously, and I hadn't quite, all these distinctions hadn't been intuitive. So I had to go through whatever I was thinking about and really consciously, what is it I'm talking about? What is? No, it's not that, it's this. It's kind of like that, but it is more. Just as I'm thinking out loud to myself, I was able to kind of make that the other
and just
interact with that. And because I knew that I wanted at the end, for me, a complete molecule of information, full FourGame thought, that just is what it is, what it isn't, what it leads to, what comes from, what it's kind of like, and a quote or two and an image that helps me give a general grok. I feel like from there I can walk in and talk about it. Okay. I don't know those things. I just feel like I don't know how I can help you. And so for me, a lot of people just saying what something is doesn't really help, because it's only a partial thing, and often it's just not enough. Right. So I felt to come into these situations I had to come into with the sense of emotional control I needed to have, I needed to know what I was talking about better than anybody else. Right. And so in my terminology, I needed a full definition. So like Voltaire, I think, was a guy. So you want to argue with me, define your terms. Yeah, same thing. Or the idea that the magician's trick was like, we're going to do the trick really early, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that for me was, I'm going to get all these things really clarified up. And that matched to my experience overseas, where I found internationally doing business, I could either grapple through the way they were doing things and always be on the back foot, dumb foreigner, right. Or I could up front say, hey, I understand I do things a little differently. Here's how I like to do things. Bing, 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 bing. Does that make sense? Cool. Can you give and then I could do like international business or whatever. Yeah. It's a plan was. So I was in the whole food business. Mm-hmm. So to the question of what's going on, what are you doing? Well, I would say there's a whole food revolution going on. That's the story, right? It's characterized by all these whole food alternative gadgets, smoothies, and fruit nut bars, and all of these things you can see. It's changing all the systems of grocery stores, because these grocery stores mid-game, they've got just too much processed food. In the course of the next 10 years, they're going to get more whole food. That's the whole food revolution. It can't not happen, because people's deep games are getting more holistic, in harmony with nature. The front goes with the back, more gestalting, more processing. So therefore, that makes the idea of whole food make sense. Because if you have a holistic deep game, the idea of keeping your food pure and unprocessed makes intuitive common sense. It's going to hit the market as whole food alternatives. And therefore, my team and us, we're thinking about this and doing that and feeling that. And we're the team that's helping as part of this story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was able to come in and say, yeah, I feel really bad about those terrible bars that are making this story so hard to get to a positive revolution. Okay. And so I understand there's a FourGame dynamic to every situation. This guy thinks this guy thinks, and everyone has their FourGames, and none are wrong. It's just their perspective. But instead of just seeing it by some other metric or some other slice and dice way, I was willfully saying, I know a lot of those. I've studied them for years, an MBA, run a business. I appreciate a lot of models. But in this meeting right now, what am I going to use and how am I going to frame it for all these people? I'm going to rock their FourGames, and I'm going to present something better instead. I'm going to pull us all together on it, and we're going to do that next step, and we're going to realize that we've been partners all along. Or something like some harmonious idea of what I'm going to do with it. And so before these big meetings, which you didn't have that many a year, so I couldn't screw up, so there was a lot of pressure. Yeah. I would really want to practice I'd visualize what's going to happen, rationally understand what it is kind of like. Why is it kind of like that? It's kind of like that because this is this, and it's like that, and just in my own mind, just as a meditative tool. And then you can take whatever martial art punches or kicks that you had learned, you go practice that one 1,000 times. But that was secondary. Mostly it was, but that's where the idea of, and then you're getting your alignment, center line. This is just a big center line. Right. And the center line of my problem that I've now externalized so I can attack. Because I like fighting metaphors.
Well, that's interesting too, because
which are limited. You can only go so far with fighting metaphors. You know?
But if you're feeling like you have a big sales meeting or something, and you have stage fright, I guess basically you have all this nervous energy, that's probably the physical state you're going to be in once you're sitting in front of all those people. So it's one thing to be sitting nice and zen under dreaming when they come up with this objection. I would say that it's or your heart's beating and you're nervous, and they say, this is not what we're looking for. And you go, but actually it's kind of like what it is you're looking for, whatever. And you're going, the physical and mental state that I'm going to be in the meeting, I'm going to approximate that as much as I can and practice what I'm going to say now and do it quickly and do it in different orders. That's kind of like in stand-up comedy, you can sit around and practice your jokes in a mirror, it's not unhelpful, but before a gig, you would have you'd be flooded with all the adrenaline and everything, and you're anxious. So what I would do is I would wait until that time to practice my set. And I would go walk around the comedy club outside and I would practice my jokes then, because I'm like, I already feel all the anxiety. So if I can practice it now, and my body will come up with like, oh, the way you said that is stupid. Don't even say that on stage. Change it. Like, so yeah, that tracks.
But that's a sign that says you're ready.
Yeah.
But so that bit allows, because then if you do it enough, you show up at the jokes of the meeting and you don't have to remember anything.
Yeah.
And that was where it ends up. Now you don't have to do that, because you're like, you know what, I don't have to do all that. I'll get there and I'll survey the situation. They've got the FourGames with them. I'll ask them from them. I didn't bring anything, right? I just need to pull it out, right? It's like, no, everyone's got their FourGames in their pockets. They're carrying all the stuff.
And that's why it's a human-sized
this was
thing.
Just the gadget at hand. But the idea of, I want to be able to focus my attention willfully and skillfully in these certain dimensions in a way that is generative for everybody. That isn't manipulative, that is creative and generative. So it generally ends up the idea of what I'm doing is opening up the FourGames of other people.
Okay.
And then in that newfound space and power, we do something.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what the partnership is. Hey man, I understand you look at it that way, but that's a limited version. There's a lot more to you than that. Mm-hmm. You've also got these other dimensions, and that's what I'm excited about. Because now, once you get that, and again, it's what you have in yourself, and if you doubt it, we'll take you through the process so you can prove it to you, and then we can move on to this next part. We're now armed with this new awareness. You have new abilities you can do. In the same way, now when I give you two swords, you can fight different.
Right.
And then it's like, great, now let's get some kinesthetic physical movements where all of you feel good, and it doesn't matter at all what it is.
Right.
And that's where the sports, I think, come into. Because I think a lot of people can go back to their sports experience or whatever it is. They used to wrestle. So that idea of, I'm scared before. A couple minutes before you're wrestling, you're sitting there in tights in front of the whole school. It's all your tough talk now. It's like, So a lot of people get in that situation and they draw from those experiences where, oh yeah, my physical body came online and betrayed me in the end, or I hadn't practiced it. So when I did get to the meeting, my mind was right, but when the guy pushed me, I got over, my voice went high, whatever, because that physical part got overlooked. That's why I think it's really easy to start with all the physical stuff. Start anywhere. I can start with the physical stuff because it doesn't take any explanation.
Right.
We get to, me personally, but I can see you can also talking your way from the top.
So,
but then something even more higher form of the art, I think, is then make a gadget that's so attractive, that's so sticky, that's so fantastic that people can't help but be drawn to it. And in the process of fiddling with it, their FourGames get better without me ever having said a word.
Yeah.
That's even a higher art still. And that's where this idea of a generative gadget that you put out into the world, an artifact, for me, from a FourGame point of view, it's like, I don't want it just to do the job. I want it to play a role in a bigger story.
Right.
That I hope is unfolding and I hope helps, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So it gives this creator, as a creator, it gives you a little, broader answer, if that makes sense.
And so I guess the final part here is within all this, I know you use this back in your factory when you were a younger entrepreneur, and that is a mid-game that presents one context. You're like, I'm in this factory that could disappear if I fuck it all up, and then I'm a failure. I'm saying that whole, but now this is in like this beautiful FourGame ranch, the Combswood, you call it, right? And like, it's a very different mid-game context that this mid-game gadget's in, and you're at a different point in your long game. So I guess, can you show us some of just show us around this building, show us the context of your favorite gadgets in here.
Yeah, sure. Well, part of the dream where your early part of your story, right, is this is the part of the story now, but someday down the road, all the mid-game's going to come. We're going to get paid, we're going to get a house, we're going to get a boat, we're going to get whatever it is. That long, clean green future. When it all works out, here's some of the peaks over there. And as it's me living in a van and being a minimalist, we always had the compound was the dream. Family compound, right? I'm the youngest of three brothers. My brother and I are going to team up. We're going to help the family. We're going to have a family compound. That was the mid-game vision. And then as the process of building natural balanced foods came, I don't know, you just get wiser. The power of generative mid-game became more and more clear to me as I get older, and the role of helping younger people develop, and how hard it is for younger people to just get the opportunity to run into the right mid-game, the right situation, that popped what they already have. The problem isn't that they don't have 4Games and they could use them perfectly well. It's just for whatever reason, their environment, their situation, they've never run into an opportunity where they're allowed to pop.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the idea of a generative mid-game environment that helped people come and you could work on your 4Games at whatever pace you want, that always appealed to me because that was where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that was me going through. I was always looking for, where can I go to get that? And you can't.
Right.
But I think we're coming to a point where more and more people are realizing that. And they're all coming to this kind of idea of, there's a multi-dimensional approach that's more appropriate for these times.
Right.
And then they're saying, where's the mid-game real life place I can go do that? Mm-hmm. And what's the minimal structure I can use around that isn't dogmatic and isolated, but can allow me to connect with the bigger community that's interested in that kind of thing. That makes sense. So for me, this was after Natural Balanced Foods, I'm going to get to work on this cool generative mid-game project. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was also a thing of, I didn't feel too comfortable talking about 4Game dynamics until I had landed the plane with Natural Balanced Foods. Why should we listen to you, man? Right? How'd that work? So for me, it had to be, I was conscious while doing Natural Balanced Foods that, hey, I'm using all of this while I'm steering the plane. It's going to be a good story someday, and when I'm done and on the ground, if it worked. And so I knew that next project was going to be 4Game dynamics.
Gotcha.
And I knew where that was going to be. That's going to mean a mid-game place. Now I've got the little system that I think works, and I think I've got a long game, at least a personal story of me using it, and so I've got absolute sincerity about my experience with it. Great, now that's a new chapter that needs a different mid-game environment to then scale it to the next level, which is then when I run into Garrett and you guys. So then you go onto Twitter to be like, where are you going to find these people? And then that's where the abstract weirdness of 4Game dynamics for me has attracted a really nice kind of person. Mm-hmm. People can figure out what the hell I'm talking about without what you guys are making is a really interesting class of person. Mm-hmm. And you're one of those. And then to find it out, to grok what it is, to decipher it, to do all the steps that took you here, you're the one I'm looking for.
Right.
Right? And there's something about that kind of sensibility of things that allows you to always be running into, now's a part of the story where this happens. Mm-hmm. But with a sense of agency of, great, now we got this 4Game canvas in front of us. What shall we do?
Right.
And that gives you that short game attitude. It gives you that charisma in that context.
Yeah.
That people brings you this attitude of confidence. I trust that person.
Right.
And they should, because you're looking out for the dimensions that need to be looked out for. And you're not getting hung up in some long game status thing about how you get it fixed. But like, hey, one way or another, we're going to get these dimensions sorted out in a way that you're delighted.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so all of this stuff, again, I don't know record-wise, but was just my daydream, my long game was great. We're going to hope for revolution. We're going to build this company. So it can take care of itself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go work off, build this thing, help my family out. So, and here we are. And that's the sensation you get sometimes when it hits. This thing you've been talking about and thinking about for so long, mm-hmm. Suddenly you're like, we've arrived. Today's the day. And it's a surprise, but it's not total surprise because you've been thinking about it forever. Mm-hmm. And you've been kind of preparing for this day forever. Like Garrett with his cards. Here's the gadget we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And something goes from your mental space to your physical space. And that's transformative.
Yeah.
And so the idea for me of this is kind of evidence too. Like, that whole long game stuff and you're banging on the bag on your age and all of that path of a young guy working really hard to do it all right. Yeah. It's just interesting on the far side of it to see. Because you can go back through your own timeline. And we'll do this too.
Okay.
In the timeline. You march back through your own timeline and you're checking your 4Games at different spots.
Okay.
And then you jump forward. So it has this feeling of like, you've arrived to something you've not exactly the way you expected it, mm-hmm. but something like this. It's like, we'll get the system, I'll build a place, and some smart young guys will notice it and show up. Lo and behold.
I did it.
And if you've got that kind of thing about whatever happens next, you're always really interesting because you just have a little bit of the future in your hand, but not so much specificity that you're annoying or presumptuous.
Right.
You've just got some gist sense of what's going on that seems to be validated by what you've got.
Cool.
Thank you. All right. What day were you born?
July 31st, 1996.
Oh, this is July 31st, 1996. How long do you think you're going to be before you die? Or when you die?
Aim high.
30, no, probably 80.
What?
Let's go for 80.
Okay, so where are we now?
If I can make it to 80, that's pretty good.
My grandma's 82.
She's doing great. What's the problem?
Say like 100.
I'm going to be older than
80.
Thanos. I'm going to make it.
Although men do die first, so.
Okay, so you're born?
Because 80 isn't even good enough for women. They're just, only made it 80, you're a loser.
So when was that, 96?
96.
Okay, where are you today? If at the end of that is how old?
Let's call that 85.
Okay, that's 85. We're gonna march up to where you are now.
1, 2,
Baby step.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20. Okay, 25.
Okay. And then now just take a look. Rise up over your timeline. Just take a look in your mind, forward and backwards.
I'm getting to panic.
Okay.
There's not much left.
But as you notice backward, every one of those memories has a mental component. It's a full 4-game stack.
Yeah.
Going back that way.
Okay.
That you can go back over and down and access. You can feel a lot of those emotions. Mm-hmm. And some of it's all clouded up. Some of it you can't get to, but a lot of it you can. Right?
Yeah.
And then if you look forward, and just let that kind of empty, there's the game field to fill bit. And then now, holding where you are, come march up here to 85. Hey! And sitting in that rocking chair, or version now.
Get off my lawn!
Looking back this way.
Okay.
Right? And you don't have much left here. But you got all that. Now, can your 26 brain grok that into your long game in a way that resonates? And once you can do that, then we can start marching up and down and imagining things, strategizing things, taking alternatives. Okay. So then now we march back here.
I found a quarter.
Money.
And so now if that's your long game, now the question of what do you want to do? What do you want to do instead? And where am I in this bigger story? There's a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah.
It can't not be. And that narrative power, that narrative idiom that goes through your life, you can start to kind of see that. And therefore your long game, you realize like, hey, I don't have an endless amount of time. I don't have all options. I'm already a little bit into the story. But it feels like you have a lot more control because from here you can see not just some abstract forward.
Yeah.
There's a 4-game pipeline that I can craft, or I could go this way, or I could go. And that sense of agency is now kind of a multidimensional agency. That's why the moment the 4-game lens is so powerful, it's like, God, if I take the 4-game lens off, I don't have that multidimensional agency. I've just got kind of this vague direction to go.
Right.
So that's why it's so powerful, I think. Because your experience from here forward is quite a bit different than your experience up to here.
Right.
Because it gets exposed. They said that's pre-4-game. You get up here, you're often uncertain, and then you find something that helps you grok it and make sense.
Yeah.
And then the rest is easier.
Yeah.
Right? And that could be 4-game, that could be anything, whatever it is. That's the part of the journey where a young person goes, finds something helpful, gets skilled at it, takes it out into the world, is generative with it, comes back to the village a hero, and passes it on. You just happen to be here. I just happen to be here, or wherever. Right. And there's all these dark versions one can take too, but that's kind of the broad. It all works out what you started with, and you can tweak that as you wish. And you never know the sense of, gosh, you might get hit by a truck. Right? I mean, so that's that mystery uncertainty part. Like, don't kid yourself. Get away. Like nobody planned for the pandemic. There was all this long game that give everybody in Ukraine. None of their long game played out. They were going to retire. They were going to have families. They're going to buy a house. They were going to do that.
Yeah.
They were sitting here thinking that's what it was, but in fact, it was this one over here.
And then no.
Yeah. So there's the sense of don't get too comfortable with your own abstraction.
Right.
But use it as well as you can. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because then in your own head you can name those chapters. I don't know, what's this, if this was a story, what's this story called?
I wanted to call my first stand-up album Useless Baby. My opening joke was always I was a useless baby. My only job was to save my parents' marriage, and I couldn't even do that right. And so that would be here.
All right. Well, then
or technically,
what's the opposite of a useful baby? Because the whole transition of life is this journey, which is good. A useless baby is about as useless as you can get. So
Yeah.
you're starting from a good base. And then if you walk over here and you're completely satisfied, capable, not to die.
A useful corpse.
Yeah, what's the difference? How's as far as a useless baby can go?
Right.
If you care to. Somewhere else.
Yeah.
But just that sense of who else would have any sense of influence over that story more than you?
Yeah.
No one's going to think about it more than you.
Right.
You're going to show up with basically, here's my broad intention, and I can tweak it. But there's a lot of long game power in knowing your own, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then also knowing that everyone else has it, but most people have never gone to the trouble. So they're sitting up here just like you are, but they don't have a lens necessarily that's helping them look at it, that's helping them feel that that's anything other than some collection of overwhelming and scary.
Yeah.
So it's just clean up your long game room a little bit.
So you can literally just like walk this out, and it would start with remembering things like I remember that, or if you're zero, you wouldn't remember it, but you go.
Now walk at each step, take a minute, and absorb the thoughts and the feelings and the environments that were basically there that come to mind, and see which ones you can really touch.
So my first memories probably start around here. I remember the day Neil deGrasse Tyson said Pluto wasn't a planet. I was 4. I was heartbroken. We heard it on the radio, and my dad was like, fuck that guy. That guy's not a scientist. He's on the radio. What kind of dork scientist is on the radio? Then he dropped me off at the playground for preschool, and kids pushed me down the slide. Face first. Wasn't fun. So that's here. Okay. But yeah, so then we start approaching like kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher, it's hilarious. She actually told my parents that I needed to stay back because I didn't draw or cut inside the lines. I was like, that's pretty bang on. I didn't end up staying back, but okay. Then we got like first grade, not too much important out of there. Second grade, I started doing karate in like first or second grade. That was fun. Third grade, I started saying I like cheese a lot in third grade. It was a thing. I don't know. I like Bionicles. It was a bad year. Fourth grade, fifth grade. No, in somewhere between here, I wanted to watch like some Naruto or some cartoon. And it was a Saturday, and it was a rainy Saturday. Usually on Saturday, my dad did yard work, but it was rainy. So he's like, I'm not watching your stupid cartoon. I'm paying for HBO. We're doing HBO. And so he puts on HBO, and it's Robin Williams' last stand-up special called Weapons of Self-Destruction. Wasn't a red flag or anything. And I was like amazed. I'm like, oh, people can do that? They can just stand up there and talk and be like stupid, and it works. And so somewhere around here, I was like, that's the thing. And then I started. And
how old are you? Around 10, probably.
Yeah. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. So, and it keeps going. So I'm past the point where I said 25, but this was supposed to be 25, so I guess it'd be back there. So now we're here. Okay, now we're at 25. Now what do I do?
Well, you can see how much power there is into what you've got now. Because I can go back and say, well, what's the difference between your FourGames now and your FourGames 5 years ago? And again, I'm just trying to get you to get reps in your brain of FourGames. So all these little tricks are all just getting you enough reps, man. Right? Here, grab this weight. Here, hold this handle. Here, grab on that machine.
Yeah. Shit, 5 years ago, I was like borderline homeless. I just dropped out of school, so my mid game was like nothing at all. It was negative nothing. It was just a bunch of debt. And whatever books I had in my bag. I hardly even had clothes because we got bed bugs at one point, and the bed bugs like ate a bunch of my clothes, so that was shitty. So that was like 5 years ago. What's odd is I was like obsessed with the personal development stuff for almost as long, maybe a little after I started getting into the creative stuff. But there's like, you can only bench press your actual problems away so much.
What was the 80-20 of the mental operating system you were actually running, given everything you were studying?
Well, at age 20, maybe a little 19 or so, it was still like victim of the story. The story has happened to me. Okay. I'm not an author of it. Okay. So I had this whole thing like, there are all these forces in my life, and I need to fight against them rather than like...
Oh, it's interesting. Okay. And then when did that switch?
It switched when I'd say it really started switching during the beginning of COVID, because it started switching during the beginning of COVID because I was living in Toronto with Emma, and then I was going to go visit my mom, and my dad had died the summer before in 2019. I was 22, 23, and I was helping her with will, estate, that kind of stuff. And it's February 2020, and I go back to visit her, and borders closed because COVID. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just stuck here living with my mom. And the house is kind of dilapidated. We had a black mold problem. And I'm just sitting there. And I had such a strong ego about things because my short game was always I'm fighting. And my long game was always I'm in opposition to the story of my life. And the deep game was whatever negative shit it was. And I never thought about the mid game at all. I was like, I don't even need any of that stuff. I don't care. I'm gonna ego my way through it. I'm gonna do push-ups till I'm rich. Fuck you. That was kind of my attitude. And then you're sitting socially isolated in a black mold house, and it's cold, and you're just like, and you're broke. And try to buy a pizza, and your card goes into overdraft, and you're like, yeah, mid game's real. The mid game exists. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, I don't have any of the things I need. I'm gonna acknowledge I need them. Is creating a feeling. Let's go in. And I went into that, and I started writing music, and that, for me, that was a very transformative thing, and it made me realize, if you feel a certain way about the story in the past, you're allowed to feel that way, but you don't have to identify with that feeling. You can feel that way and get it out onto paper and play songs about it. It could be cathartic and useful for other people, and then you can move on from it. You can do what you want. So I'd say that was right at the start of COVID. Is that?
That's like a big role change.
Yeah.
I think what that is, like FourGame wise, the whole role different in terms of responsibility and what the path that comes with it, and to be conscious of it at the time. Because I do think there's something that's really precious about that youthful attitude.
Yeah.
That you lose old, but you need, so it's like, that's why I think you got to get the young ones fired up on it early.
Right.
Because that attitude doesn't last forever.
Right.
Fuck it, I'll do push-ups. Oh, there's something really precious about that young, aggressive, anywhere but here, man, attitude, that gets kind of used in all sorts of weird ways if it doesn't get harnessed. But harnessed in the service of generative FourGames, it's like, hey, you're not grinding, you're blossoming.
Come onto my timeline, dog. You are cute. Be part of my timeline.
She's like, no, I'm scared.
But you can see how you can look about that as the evolution of someone's FourGames.
Yeah.
It also shows that they always change all the time, and they never go anywhere. Here's a little baby, you had FourGames. Way out there's an old man, right? And the degree that you're looking at him is as close as anyone's ever going to look at him.
Yeah.
Right? No one else cares. They're worried if they look, big in their pants or whatever, right? But that I found is a really helpful tool, because then you can, when you're talking to people too, you can take them up and down their timeline. Come up over your timeline. Come way down over here. Let's drop now. Come up here. I'm 51.
Okay.
Where's 51?
I guess it'd be about here, right?
Okay.
Oh, I just put you past the half point of the line. That's rude. You're here. You're here now. No, you're here. You're cool.
Well, Jamie could live to past 100.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
He didn't set 85.
No.
You're here. You're right in the middle.
I'll be at your funeral at this rate. And you can see, you can go back to moments, and you can see at a certain traumatic moment, there's something that went terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Hurt. You just go back and, again, without judging it, and you've got your whole toolkit left to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. But just to go and look at it and recognize that it's always there to look at. There's resources that you didn't know you had that are always available. And you can go back and get resources from your youth. You can go forward and get resources from your future and pull them that way. And once you can play that as if it's true, it's a good mental rep piece too, of going up and down timelines, dipping into different dimensions, extracting the learnings, coming back to where you are.
Yeah.
That's like history, right? In a way.
Why doesn't Joe Rogan's company have any of this on the sales page for his battle ropes?
Oh, I don't know. But it's fun. Then you can look at anything like that, we've been talking about individuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to look at it.
You could do nations.
Someone else or a nation or the timeline of anybody that you're interested in, right?
Very cool.
Whatever we're looking at. And so then you're always an evergreen person. It's like, okay, here's this story we all know. Now let me show you some dimensions that you may not have known.
Yeah.
Think of the latest, whatever gossip of the moment is. So that I find is really interesting. And again, I've just focused your attention, harnessed it into the lingo, made you get some reps, made it personal, made it come up through you, right? So you're telling me, and now you've got all this stuff to think about, and I've left these big gaps. I don't know how you're going to fill in the next 50 years, man,
Yeah.
right? And you don't either, and you don't have to.
Right.
But it's just kind of turned it up, got it loose there to think about. You're no rush, and you can bring that timeline down to what we're going to do this afternoon.
Yeah.
If that calms it down,
Awesome.
And then with your piece with the mystery of it, I'm like, well, I'm not supposed to know exactly.
When we die, we all just get in the back of a cool truck.
Yeah, well, well, that part's as mysterious as this part.
Yeah.
So, and then the framing of it is, again, a little up to you. So,
Awesome.
but I would think that as you go and talk to people, you can get cool little exercises like that. The different therapists and whatever will have, or like their little gamer maneuvers, and you can do with the cards and stuff. But,
That's cool.
yeah, I don't know who I stole that from, but it's a good one.
That's very cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, shit. So, yeah, that was the most...
Is that all? Is there any of that new, or is that just stuff you already knew, or is that grok good or something,
No one's ever turned a battle rope into the timeline of my life before. That was cool. All of that was cool. That was the most actual Mr. Miyagi shit that's ever happened to me. It was awesome. I was like, okay, how are we going to... Like, sword fighting's cool. I like sword, but how are we going to turn that into the... But it was cool. I like that a lot.
See how it meshes? Like, at least my way of looking at things?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's a skin that you can put on anything, whether it's an item or whether you're doing it. Yeah. I'm excited to do the rest of these videos, and honestly, I'm excited to see, like, what else when this whole place is ready and we can come back and do another video and give a tour to everyone. But thank you for doing this, and I thank you for having me, and
sure, nice
thanks
job
for
for having the right attitude and coming to play, so thank you.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys. Remember, think simple, have fun, and get things done.